Way back in 1985, during a trip to the US, I was with my mom at the grocery store in line at the checkout counter. I decided to wander off a bit and something caught my eye at the end of the counter. There, stacked neatly in display, were a bunch of new Transformers that I had never seen before. These weren't the usual cars or planes that I knew. These were something different. These were dinosaurs. For as long as I can remember, I've always loved dinosaurs. Long before Star Wars, He-Man, G.I. Joe, or Transformers, I was really into those prehistoric beasts that came in all shapes and sizes. I was into them well before I could even read properly. In fact, it was my interest in dinosaurs that encouraged me to learn how to read, so that I could identify each one of them by their long and difficult names. Of all the dinosaurs, hands down my favorite was the Triceratops, which I initially pronounced as Triceratops. It was love at first sight. While most of my friends gravitated towards his presumed enemy, the Tyrannosaurus Rex, the Triceratops' bony frill topped with 3 horns, making for a fearsome visage, easily won me over. He was like a living, breathing tank. Anyway, confronted with all these new Transformers, I immediately looked for my favorite dinosaur. And I found him. Slag. And for the rest of the trip, Slag never left my side. No, I didn't shoplift him. My mom bought it for me. Now, the Dinobots were part of the second wave of Transformers introduced in 1985. And while they each possessed their own unique personalities, common among all of them was that they were all brutish, slow, and somewhat abrasive individuals. While they were technically on the side of the Autobots, they didn't really particularly like them. They just hated Decepticons more. They were also more loyal to their own leader, Grimlock, rather than to Optimus Prime. Now, as bad as the Dinobots were, Slag was supposedly the nastiest of the bunch. His bio describes him as mean-spirited and disturbingly violent. He once shot his former commanding officer in the back to convince him that they were outflanked in a battle and had to make a frontal assault. There's nothing he enjoys more than reducing Decepticons, or any unlucky Autobot who gets in the way, into pools of molten metal with his fiery breath. And if he could, would often celebrate by swimming in those pools of melted enemies. His greatest contribution to the Autobot cause was the murdering of numerous Decepticon prisoners and playing kick the can with their severed heads, something he has shown to have an odd fascination with. Of all the Dinobots, he is the only one arrogant enough to mouth off to Grimlock and challenge his leadership. Another thing interesting about Slag is his name. Now, it isn't uncommon for many Transformer characters to get slight name changes throughout the years. More often than not, it's due to Hasbro losing the rights to the name. But in Slag's case, it's a little different. By definition, the word slag refers to stony waste matter separated from metals during the smelting or refining of ore. Given his affinity for melting his enemies and his charming personality, the name seems apt. However, the word slag also has a negative slang definition in the British language, referring to a slut. Interestingly enough, slag is also commonly used as a swear word in the Transformers mythos. So because of this, for later versions of Slag, Hasbro opted to release him under different names, such as Snarl, despite the fact that there already was another Dinobot with that name, or most recently, Slug. Anyway, despite this bad attitude and unfortunate name, because he transformed into my favorite dinosaur, Slag remained to be my favorite Dinobot up to this day. And I am quite happy at the fact that he has had a good number of toy updates throughout the years. Like most G1 toys, the original Slag wasn't much to write home about. His robot mode was okay, and his dino mode was decent at best. Like I said, once I got him, I brought him with me wherever I went. I overplayed him to the point that his lower jaw loosened so much it could barely stay up, and his horns became floppy messes that I had to eventually superglue to keep them in their proper position. It would be quite a number of years before I got my next Slag, 2008 to be exact. Slag was released as Snarl for the Transformers animated line. Now, to be fair, this guy didn't look anything like the original Slag or share the same abrasive personality. The only thing they did have in common was the fact that they were Dinobots that transformed into Triceratops. Regardless, I thought that this guy was a definite improvement over the original. Although he sported that cartoony look of the series, he did have his unique look and quite an innovative transformation. Plus, he sported a huge club for a weapon that unfortunately looked like a huge Cheeto. Then, in 2014, Slag was front and center with his fellow Dinobots as they made their live-action debut in the Transformers movie, The Age of Extinction. Okay, so maybe that was a bit of an exaggeration. They were there for about the last 10 minutes of the movie, but still, it was quite the debut. Anyway, this time around, though he sported the name Slug, he was now an ancient knight of Cybertron along with the other Dinobots. Although, how they managed to get such an honorable title as Knight is beyond me. Anyway, a few years later, another mainline and more G1 looking Slug was released as part of the Power of the Primes line. Unfortunately, this version was part of a combiner set with a gimmick which really didn't do much for his individual design. It was simplistic and sorely undersized. And to make matters worse, the stock version of his combined mode with his fellow Dinobots, Volcanicus, wasn't that great either, and I had to rely on a third-party upgrade kit just to make him look decent. But speaking of third-party Transformers, there have been many different versions of Slag. Most notable, I would think though, would be Fans Toys' Scoria. Released in 2014, this was one of the first third-party masterpiece Transformers ever released. As such, despite loving Slag, his high price point was something I wasn't willing to pay, and I passed on him, which apparently wasn't the best decision I made, as his price continued to soar over the years as Fans Toys eventually completed their Dinobot team, which included yet another updated version of Slag in cesium. Eventually though, I did get my proper masterpiece version of Slag from another third-party company, Gigapower's Grassor. Unlike Fans Toys' Scoria or Cesium, which were more cartoon-based, Grassor was supposed to be the ultimate update of the original toy which I had all those years ago. So getting this guy was a no-brainer for me, and he didn't disappoint. Since this is an homage to the original toy, the transformation is pretty straightforward and not overly complicated, which is what I prefer. Plus, this guy is huge, standing a little over a foot tall in robot mode, and with a dino mode that is almost the size of a little cat, or a huge rat. Needless to say, I don't think I'll be carrying this guy around with me wherever I go. Anyway, despite having my ultimate masterpiece version of Slag, I was still wanting for a proper chug or mainline retail version of this guy. Since as awesome as Grassor was, he was meant more as a display piece. I wanted a Slag I could carry around and transform back and forth as often as I wanted, just like my original toy. And in 2021, that's exactly what we got. While he didn't do anything memorable in the 1986 Transformers movie, aside from accusing Grimlock of being full of beryllium baloney, Slag and the other Dinobots got a much coveted slot in the Studio Series 86 line. We finally got a proper Chug Slug. Released as a large leader class toy without combining gimmicks to weigh it down or compromise the design, this Slug was exactly what I wanted in my collection. So while most people prefer Grimlock as their favorite Dinobot because he transforms into the fearsome Tyrannosaurus Rex, Slag, bad attitude and all, will always be mine. What about you guys? Which Dinobot is your favorite? Or more importantly, do you prefer cesium salami or beryllium baloney? Let me know in the comments below and tell me your story. Thanks for watching Stories from the Toy Shelf. If you enjoyed this story, please help me out by giving it a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel to get notifications whenever I upload a new story. Until the next one,